Hey peeps, it's Matt here. Sorry for the slightly later start. If you're watching this live, I've had some technical gremlins, so I'm not going live. Didn't think it was going live on LinkedIn. Welcome. So today, in the run-up to Christmas and the New Year, I want to focus on your messaging for 2023. One of my favourite subjects, getting you armed with the language and the attention-grabbing arsenal that you need to grab all that attention from your high value prospects going into next year. Whether you're a consultancy, whether you're a managed service provider, you operate in that B2B space, you're going to find everything you need right here today. So as with all of my lives and presentations, certainly of late anyway, it's no fluff. I'm just rattling through it. No intros about who I am and all of that stuff. You can find that out if you really want to. Just reach out to me. I'm happy to tell you. So I'm just going to rattle through it. I'm going to tell you 3 ways today to differentiate your business and win all the deals you can handle in 2023. So let's get straight into it. There are 3 ways for any business to differentiate themselves. We run a program behind the scenes. This isn't a big plug, but our Differentiating a Day program goes through this process of differentiating your solution, your language, and your experience. So first off, your solution. What is it that makes you unique when it comes to the process of transformation that you deliver for your clients? And what is it as well that sets you apart from all of the many, many competitors you've probably got out in the world? I'm going to show you how to differentiate yourself, even when you're one of 64,000 out there. Your language. Why invitational language is the way to go, rather than what you would have experienced, and this is me going on my usual rant, that connect and pitch strategy that I've even got today in my LinkedIn inbox. Somebody who wants to connect, but also wants to tell me that they could triple my sales in the next few months, and do I want to book a call? I've just met you, mate, and I haven't even met you. So no, I don't want to do that. We're going to fly in the face of convention and what everybody else is doing out there and actually focus on what works. So we're going to harness your language library. We're going to create the kinds of language and scripts. I'm going to show you some specific examples about how to improve the response rate when you do reach out and connect with prospects. And ideally, you do that in a warm environment, not cold, which again is what everybody seems to be doing, that automation. Throw a lot of mud and see what sticks. And then lastly, the experience. How can you develop a more frictionless path to success for your clients compared to any other route that they could potentially take in order to absolve themselves of this challenge in their business that they face and that you can help with? So I'm going to encourage you as part of this process to go and look at where are the friction points in dealing with your competitors, in trying to achieve an outcome without your help, and then position yourself against it. Okay, so those are the 3 ways. Let's get straight into it by discussing how to differentiate your solution. So I want you to aim for this status of being a category of 1. What do I mean by that? Well, if you go to a networking event, if somebody comes up to you and says, what is it you do? And if you've responded historically with a job title, or I'm a management consultant, or I'm an accountant, whatever it might be, then you're falling foul of that trap that just puts you in that pigeonhole with everybody else that is in that category, that is in that role. And that's going to set you back. Because, for example, let's take management consultants, for example. You tell me that that's what you are, and let's not forget, you've answered the question, what you do. Management consultancy is not a doing word. It's not an outcome. It's not a result. So first off, let's try and replace that with something that is a quantifiable result or outcome that you deliver for your clients. But also, when you respond like that, we're a management consultancy. I'm going to look in the recesses of my brain, and I'm going to look for somebody who I'm familiar with that also does what you do. That gives me comfort to know that I know somebody who's like that. So you say I'm a management consultancy, I'm going to say, oh, you're a bit like, and I might not say it out loud, but I'm thinking it, you're a bit like that other one. And they charge X and their business model is Y. And, oh, do you remember they were in the news for that data breach? And, they had all of that trouble. They weren't very trustworthy, were they? whatever baggage there may be attached to their experience of your category, that's going to be dumped on you. I know you don't want that to happen, but it's human nature. The other thing is, when it comes to pricing and the structure of the deal, they're going to equate all of that expectation on you as well. So if you were to position yourself alongside your competitors and then come to me with a price, I'm going to compare you. And it's that simple. So escaping that trap of price resistance and the price ceiling, that's going to be impossible unless you establish this category of one. Now, this is exacerbated where it's a highly competitive space. Now, we've got the Microsoft Partner Network logo up there because at last count, there's about 64,000 of them in the world. And I'm here to tell you that as competitive a market as that might be, and I recognize they're all going to be selling different solutions and focus on different products, but even if they were all selling the very same product, let's take Microsoft 365, for example, and migrating to the cloud, I could differentiate each and every one of those 64,000 because every single one of those partners and those businesses will have a very unique method of delivering the transformation that they do. And it's about establishing what is that unique mechanism. It's a really strong point of differentiation. The other way to look at this is, again, as part of this category ownership piece, the old or the common language just won't cut it. There's a very good reason for this. It's that if your prospects feel that they have seen or heard that message before, then you've already lost their attention. Okay, so we are pre-programmed as human beings. It's back to the fight or flight mechanism to notice what is different. Okay, so we are going to notice what is different. I was sitting on the tube the other day. There was a fella wearing a jacket that was basically made of crow feathers. He got my attention amongst all of the people just wearing their black overcoats and beanie hats. And that is what happens in business too. In everyday life, we are always looking out for and giving our attention to what stands out, what is different. But of course, we can't go too far. We've got to balance this with the pace of your buyer and what they would expect in terms of the tone, the language, and your brand value and how it comes across to them. But being different is going to serve you well. So how do you become the only? I want you to have this aspiration to be the world's only at your area of specialism, just like Chesney Hawkes is the one and only. Bless him. He gave a little performance recently at the World Cup, didn't he? Yeah, he's clearly doing well in life. Right, good for him. Okay, category ownership. This is what we're talking about, and this is my wish for you going into the new year. It involves redefining how businesses or use your product or service in order to establish that category. So when it's fine being the first, it's fine being the leader in a particular industry, it's fine being the first mover and having that first mover advantage, but it's about taking ownership of that category. It's not, by the way, it's not that sort of category creation, and I'll give you some examples of that. But what it does do, when you can establish this category, and ours, by the way, our category, just to give you an example, is mere scopology. Okay, nobody else is using that terminology, and if they are, let me know because it's trademarked. And that's the beautiful thing about this. When you establish a new category, as many of our clients have, you can protect it. It's intellectual property because it is a unique language that you're using to describe your category. Then you will quite often be able to protect it, unless it's really kind of common language that would be used in everyday life and therefore can't be protected. But essentially what that does is it gives you the protection to new entrants coming into that market, to marketing themselves alongside you anymore. So you escape that competitive pressure. And it's like, and I know you'll have seen this countless times, it's like fishing in that blue ocean where you don't have all of the sharks or competitors swimming around all going for the same fish. You're on your own. You get to choose who you work with because you're the one that's commanding and retaining the attention of those high value buyers. So here's an example of category creation. We'll be very familiar with this. I want to explain category creation. These are the companies that have redefined a category. They've created something completely new. So apparently Xbox Live, so I'm told, Claire has done the research on this, my colleague, Microsoft combined a traditional video game with a subscription-based online service to own the live gaming category. I think we've seen Google fail at this recently. So clearly they've done such a fantastic job. It's made it difficult even for new entrants to come into the market. Now, that might be technological, it might be for other reasons, but that is a fact. Shazam, the only real app that's at this level that can identify music, movies, advertising, and TV shows based on a short sample of audio. And then Dyson, really, I mean, arguably, do they own the category? Because people still refer to vacuum cleaners as Hoovers. So you could argue that Hoover kind of owned that category, but Dyson came along with the bagless version. And even though that patent has long since expired and you've got new bagless entrants into the market, Dyson still arguably own that category. But they created it. That's the key thing. And that isn't category ownership, because that is much more accessible to the likes of you and I. So here are some examples of category ownership in B2B. Or are they? Excuse the frog in my throat. Twisted Fish claim to be the world's only IT services firm that analyzes the reason that every single support ticket they receive. So when something breaks, we analyze it, and every week we look for trends and recurring issues. It's getting a bit meh at that point, but crucially, they started off with "we are the only." That, if you can achieve it, if it's true, and if it means something to the prospects, then that is category ownership. We're the only Scottish IT service provider. You can niche yourself. You can go down to a particular location or region if that's, again, important to your clients. Is it important to for example, a Scottish business to be working with a Scottish IT service provider? If it is, then that's a means of differentiation. Aligned systems, customer satisfaction is our priority, and we develop long-term relationships by offering value for blah, blah, blah. That is dull. But then they get to the point. We are the only local company that offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. I'm going to talk about this later, but risk reduction, mitigating the risk of doing business with you is a great differentiator and should come across in your language and your positioning and your messaging as well, if that is a key consideration for you. Category ownership is really about establishing new language to describe the category in which you occupy. Here's a process for how you can do it. Think about what is the current overused language around what you do. So in this example, it's IT support. And what we worked out with this particular client is that actually IT support wasn't really their leading proposition. They wanted and had the chance to really establish themselves in the area of cybersecurity. So we started looking around what's out there in terms of cybersecurity. Well, next best would be threat detection. It's a new language. It's different. It's not cybersecurity, which is one of the most used terms in the world right now when it comes to business and technology. But it's being used by quite a few people, as is threat intelligence. Not as many, but this is really growing in popularity now since we went through this exercise with a client. But threat intelligence, better than threat detection. It also implies, and this is the key thing with your language and your messaging, it's about also what's implied with the language you're using. It's the different words and what they convey. So detection is great, but detecting a threat is only going to go so far. Threat intelligence implies that you're getting more intel about that particular issue, and it's going to arm you with better information to be able to solve it, crucially. And then we've worked out the best language in this instance was threat immunity. Now, there was a bit of kind of reticence around using this because immunity is a strong word. Can you ever be really immune? And I think if any of us have learned anything over the pandemic in the last few years, immunity is a spectrum. You're never truly immune from anything. But that language, in the context of how they were using it, and they could explain it, of course, crucially, once they're in the conversation, then that was a good fit. And this is really important. I want you to think about what language can you use that you can legitimately explain once you're in the conversation, but is intriguing enough that it's going to get you the attention necessary to get into the conversation in the first place. Okay, so what I see is people playing it too safe, using the dull, well-trodden language in the expectation of getting into those conversations. And of course, it doesn't happen. You don't get that all-important attention at first. You're certainly not going to get the response that's required to get into that dialogue and then turn the conversation to anything business related. So you've got to be outside of your comfort zone, using language that is going to intrigue and compel those buyers, but that you can back up. That isn't an outlandish claim that actually isn't true or is impossible for you to prove. Okay, so it is a fine line. There's a balance, but it starts with being more out there and being more confident and ballsy, let's face it, about what you do. Okay, next up, let's differentiate your language. We've started that process with the category creation. So your category language is one aspect that you can really uplift your vocabulary and start to generate that attention that you deserve. I want you to look at building what we call a language library, which looks at various other areas of your business and the language you use, the vocabulary you use to determine and describe the various aspects. So it could be the people, the stakeholders, internal and external. It could be the challenges that you help to solve. It could be your solutions, again. And it could be just even down to marketing assets that you use when you reach out to people. Now, you'll see at the end of this presentation, for those who are so minded, we've got a positioning Pow Wow. That's an initial chat and a diagnostic that we provide to our clients, and that's value right from the off. Okay, and isn't about a huge commitment. It's a 3-minute tool that we send out to our clients, and a subsequent conversation where we can go into more detail about that information. Now, we could have said, book a call, here's my Calendly link, which is what thousands of people seem to be doing right now. It's not going to wash. We need to give identity and language to the marketing assets, to the steps of the process, to the engagements that we have with our clients. And you'll have seen this if you've promoted anything from a lead magnet, a report, a downloadable template, a webinar, whatever it might be. The positioning of that piece in and of itself is crucial to the success and the appeal of that asset. So this is what we're talking about, getting a language that covers all bases inside your business and your marketing efforts. So that is what a language library is. It's a visual stash of all the words, phrases, and isms that encompass your brand, your solution, your identity, and as I say, the people and the assets that you use. And it can take many forms. So here's a little peek at ours. Peek with an E, should be 2 E's rather than EA. Here's that language library that we've used up until now. It doesn't contain everything. We've kept some of the good stuff back, but pigeonholability, what I was describing earlier, making yourself unpigeonholable is a really good thing to do. A challenge that our clients face is tumbleweed outreach. When they do message prospects, leads, they're not getting a response. They're not earning that response. And it's just tumbleweeds whenever they do so. Twinning, not winning. They look and sound like their competitors. We've got some of the solutions. What we're looking to create for our clients is that responsive. I love that. We've got a pipeline certainty engine where you're running your marketing by the numbers, and you can reverse engineer the number of sales and the revenue that you want to do as a business. We've got the 6th star, where we talk about, of course, you can get 5 stars on all those review sites, but that's not really delighting your clients and taking them to that next level. Aim for that 6th star. Rev up your recurring revenue from camo to whammo. So, if you do blend in, it's like wearing camouflage. Whammo is really what gets you that attention. We've got a whole lot of meh language over there in purple as well, like mehscapology, the metaverse, our methodology. There's all sorts. But, you don't have to go as outlandish and frankly stupid as we do. It's just about, again, matching the pace and the tone of your prospect, but also getting out of that comfort zone and not sounding like everybody else that's in your category presently, before you own your own category, of course. All right, here's how to start. Here's how we recommend you get into this. So get your team together. And what I'd suggest is you bring together the people who have a good sense of what your buyers are after, the challenges that they face. So anybody in customer service, customer success, anybody in sales who hears the challenges when they're diagnosing their problems, anybody in marketing who has to position your business against those challenges, get them all together. And either with Post-it notes or using a tool like we do on Lucid Spark, which is this online collaborative whiteboard, get them all together and spark up that sort of post-it note environment. Start a 10-minute timer, and you can gamify this whole process if you like, and offer prizes for the best ideas to come out of this. And then just go at it, bash your heads, and work through your submissions for new language and categorize it. So maybe spend 10 minutes focusing on the people that you deal with, the buyers, how you refer to them, the people in your business who direct, who manage, who deliver. What kind of identity are you giving to them? How do you refer to them? And then just work through all of the different categories, those people, the challenges, the solutions, the marketing assets, and then look at the gaps and give these areas an identity and really fill those gaps as you work through. And then it's all about validation thereafter. First off, you've got to update some of your materials to reflect that language and start promoting it to people who would represent your ideal prospects, and then get that feedback, validate that it works, validate that it commands a greater amount of attention and a greater response than what you're already using. And you can deploy those kind of A/B testing and multivariate testing techniques at that. And then maybe consider revisiting this every 3 months at least, and see how you get on with it. That's what we recommend for building your language library. And then next up is, I mentioned about tumbleweed outreach and this idea that reaching out, as people have done in my LinkedIn email today even, with these lazy messages and what have you, we're not getting the response that we used to. It is a noisy space. And my prediction is, this is why, getting ready for next year is even more important. If you buy into the world rhetoric, there are harsh times ahead economically. My prediction is during that time, it's going to get even noisier online. We saw it during the pandemic, where everybody kind of flocked to LinkedIn and online and in your email inbox with cold emails to try and get your attention. It's going to get even noisier. So focus on your language, a focus on differentiation, and a focus on invitational language is going to serve you much, much better than anything that certainly those ne'er-do-wells have been trying, and maybe you have as well, if you're completely honest with yourself. So what is invitational language? It's jargon-free, open-ended conversation. It's not proposing on the first date or an opportunity to heavily pitch your business. It's not ideally cold at all. You would be in conversation already. And here's the thing that I think a lot of people just don't really do, is they make efforts to really hyper-personalize the approach to get into a dialogue first on any basis, whether it's the charity run that the person did the previous weekend that they've been talking about online, whether it's the new hire that they've just made, whether it's the office move they just went through, whether it's the round of funding they just closed, whatever it is, just get into a dialogue first. And when it's warm, then you can start to use this invitational language, which will be a massive uplift on what they would have experienced from anybody else. So here's an example of that kind of poor outreach stuff. And this is an actual message that I got via LinkedIn. I mean, first off, it's far too long for LinkedIn. Right. I hope this finds you well and it doesn't intrude much. Meh. I mean, first off, it's disingenuous. I don't think you really care if this finds me well. If, as I am right now, suffering from the aftermath of a cold and I'm coughing my guts up, I don't think that matters, and certainly wouldn't stop you from carrying on and pitching me your wares. So don't do it. Just don't include it. I am, so we blanked out the name to protect the not so innocent, the largest directory of training providers in the UK. The reason I'm reaching out is I believe you'd be running some trainings in 2023. And as we work with organizations like yourselves, I assume you'd be interested. It's all about them. It's impersonal. Organizations like yourselves, they haven't done their research. I can't tell you. I mean, if all you do if you do insist on doing this sort of outreach, first off, do some research. I mean, literally, I had somebody reaching out saying, oh, your products aren't on an e-commerce site. Well, yeah, I haven't got any products. So yeah, you haven't done your research, have you? Just at least come to me with some sort of indicator that you have looked into me and done, your research right. Anyway, goes on, they make assumptions. I mean, how do you know this stuff? Don't make assumptions. Don't tell me I'm doing something wrong if you don't really know. For example, that's a crucial one. It's like, people are doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. Well, yeah, whatever. Okay. There's all sorts wrong with this. I'm not going to go into too much more detail, but can we set up a call about implementing this at Total Growth Ownership, proposing on the first date? Not interested. Okay, let me show you an alternative way of doing things. So first off, this would be warmed up. You'd be in dialogue by the time that this goes out. And I'm going to explain the structure of this. And some of you might be thinking, how's this different? This doesn't work. Well, it does work. And I'll show you the stats on this in a while. But hi, Mel. I'm going to be working with 5 fintech companies in the next 30 days to completely transform the comms setup for their sales team and increase outbound call volume by 28%. Would you like to be one of them? So first off, I'm getting straight into it. I mean, this is a better example. It's not perfect by any stretch, okay? I'm not pitching it as that. But let me break this down. Getting straight to it, there's none of the hope you're well, all of that stuff. And don't forget, I'm in a conversation already at this point. So I've warmed them up on some very well-researched and hyper-personalized basis. And then I've gone to them with this. So they would be a fintech company first off. I've done my research and made sure that that's how they refer to themselves. The next 30 days, that's the time frame. I'm going to be working with 5 fintech companies. This is happening. It's already happening. We're planning for it. We're doing it. So it's not me saying, you know, I'm looking to get into a call because you need this thing that we do. It's about saying I'm going to be working with these 5 companies. And then when we get to the offer, of course, would you like to be one of them? It's very invitational. I'm inviting you into something that's already happening. Why? And that fear of missing out, the whole FOMO thing might come to play as well, but that's not really the purpose of it. We're also telling them the quantifiable result. 28% increase in outbound call volume in the next 30 days. Okay, that's a crucial part of really great messaging and positioning, is telling your buyers what they can expect. And that could be based on a previous result, a case study. It could be based on industry kind of standards across the board of all the clients that you've worked with, you've taken the average. Ideally, it would be based in evidence that it has actually happened. And it's not necessarily about saying, and this is crucial, you're not promising it's going to happen for the prospect in front of you. What you're saying is that is a typical outcome. And all of this can be explained in conversation again, once you've grabbed the attention. And then you explain what is the result that you could generate for that particular prospect. It could be a better result, let's face it. So that isn't an example of that invitational language. We're also respecting the fact that they can just hit reply. You don't have to include a link to your calendar or anything. And the result of this is it gets a 3 times better response than using that unresearched pitch on the first date kind of messaging as well. And we've got some messaging that we've tested since that is performing even better and is getting 50 to 80% response rates to everybody that we're sending it out to. So stay in touch and we will be talking about that on a future call. Invitational language. Right, some examples of what else you could do as well in this space. And these are aspects that we've tried over the years. And so I can point you in the direction of some that work better than others. The one I've just described is what we call that 5P 90D. It's kind of like 5 prospects over 90 days. 90 days is the greatest kind of amount of time over which you should deliver this quantifiable result. That's about as far forward as your prospects can really commit in their minds. So try and deliver them something within that time frame. Talk about an amazing outcome. So it's the kind of case study play. We've just achieved this with a client. Would you be interested in a similar result for yourselves? The round table offer, this works really, really well. And I love running these without the expectation of doing any business, but it just so happens pretty much every time we run one, we do close a new client. I'm running a small invite-only roundtable session on a particular subject, like reg tech, for example. Care to join us? Really, really simple. Last time I put that offer out there, we had over 30 positive responses. We had a fantastic session, connected a lot of people who can benefit from being connected to each other. And yeah, we did some business off the back of it, as we usually do. A group invite. So I wouldn't, if you don't have a group already, I'm not going to recommend that you do. This is like it's a big effort play. So don't build a LinkedIn group just to put this offer out there. But if you have a community already, then offer an invite for the group, get them in there. And that can be a really good place then to nurture those relationships, continue to add value and take the conversation to the next step. A lead magnet. If you're already in conversation, you don't need to send them to a landing page with a form. You don't need them opting in. and scare them off with a big scary form that's asking them for all sorts of data, including their email address that you're already probably using to converse with them. So just send them a lead magnet and see if they engage with it. Pro tip: if you have Sales Navigator Advanced or Teams version, then you can create a smart link for these sorts of assets, and when you send them out, then when it gets the click, it identifies the person who's engaging with that content. And if it's, for example, a PDF or a document that you've linked up, it will even break down the pages that they've spent the amount of time on. Really good insights. I mean, just for taking the anonymous kind of nature out of sometimes that feedback about who's engaging, who's responding, and it will give you some really good intel about who's warmer than the rest. And then lastly, group engagement. So you may have seen somebody comment in a particular group, and then you can reach out on the basis that they've asked for a bit of help in that area. And if it's an area of expertise, then of course you can take the conversation further. Okay, let's talk about differentiating your experience. So this is really about recognizing the fact that there are still competitors out there. There are alternative ways for your prospects to absolve themselves of this challenge they're facing that you can help them to solve. And you have to switch the buyer's brain off to any alternative solution. So it's a process of creating a logical list of arguments that you can use in conversation with your prospects so that your buyers will view your solution as superior and actually really the only viable option that they can go forward with. And it removes any other route off the table. Okay, so this is about really leaving you as the logical next step and creating an unturndownable offer. So here's what we do. And we quite often use a matrix for this, where we list all the kind of competing solutions down one side, or the competing solutions providers quite often as well as the options of do-it-yourself, which your prospects might be able to do. Depends on how technical the solution is that you provide and what's required in solving this challenge. But the other alternative you have to really account for is that they could do nothing. We are human beings, and we will take the path of least resistance if we can. And that means sometimes continuing to suffer the challenge that we're facing. We've kind of gotten used to it. Yes, it pinches a bit. Yes, it's inefficient. Yes, we might not make as much money, or we might be losing a bit of money here and there and being inefficient, but it beats actually doing something about it. And people aren't rational. So you have to account for that, and you have to invalidate doing nothing as an option. So the invalidation statements, I want you to ask yourself these questions to establish what are the kinds of arguments that you need to provide. How is this solution, the alternative solution, different to yours? What are the kind of friction points along the way, for example, that might make it more painful and less likely to succeed than yours? How is the client experience different to the one that you provide? Maybe your competitors make your clients jump through hoops to work with them that you don't. Maybe it's a much, much simpler and more enjoyable experience. How is your service less risky or completely risk-free by comparison? Do you offer a guarantee, for example, that your competitors don't? What quantifiable result have you delivered that the alternative option hasn't? Is there a way that your clients can experience success faster or in a less taxing way versus any alternative solution? And then lastly, what social proof can you share that the alternative can't? So maybe you can improve the relevance of your offer based on your experience in their sector, for example, and you can ramp up the kind of credibility in their sector and the specificity of their business. Okay, so that is pretty much everything I wanted to discuss today. Again, I want it to be no fluff. It's probably already gone on longer than I was hoping it would be, but let me know in the comments, please, what are your biggest takeaways from this session today? I want you to do these 3 or 4 things. I think it's actually 4. First off, create that category of one. Really aim for category ownership. Separate yourself from the crowd and be unpigeonholable so that you don't assume all of that baggage that the buyers will attribute to you when you say that you're the same as everybody else. Develop your language library. Get the team together. Get those Post-it notes together. Use them wisely, not like this guy. And Capture the wider language around your business to describe the people, the challenges that you help to solve, the solutions themselves, and of course, those marketing assets. How are you going to differentiate yourself there? Adopt that invitational language. How are you going to shun that approach that everybody seems to, the high automation, high volume, low personalization, pitch on the first date or in the introduction or in the connection request? How are you going to switch to a more invitational approach that actually only proposes once you're in dialogue and once there's been an expression of need? And then lastly, write a list of those arguments that invalidate all of the other alternative solutions that you can conceive of that your buyer might have in front of them for, again, getting rid of that challenge that you've identified. That's going to arm you really, really well for that conversation to be able to switch that buyer's brain off to any alternatives. Okay, so one last thing, and I did mention this earlier on, I kind of preempted it, but we want to help you to establish this new language in 2023 to do more than you've ever done before by removing all of those friction points, by generating that hard-earned attention in what is going to be an increasingly noisy space, and to make the very best of the opportunities that lie ahead. And there will be a massive transfer of wealth during this recession. And I want you to be part of that. I want you to be thriving when not everybody is going to sadly have that offer in front of them. So here's what I want you to do. Book a positioning powwow with me. What is it? It's a 15-minute conversation where we go over the results of your MEH examination. So we'll put the QR code back on screen, and I will post the link to a powwow in the comments or in the description here as well. But the differentiation MEH examination is just a set of really simple questions and statements that you agree with or disagree with to certain degrees. And you are going to get a score out of that process that shows you just how differentiated you are or aren't. And it's going to break it down into those different categories of solution, language, and experience as well. And it's going to give you some tips to help you move forward and to use better language to generate more attention and more pipeline in 2023. So book your positioning powwow now. When you book that call, it's going to email you a link to the MEH examination. Just answer those questions. It takes less than 3 minutes to do. And then it's just another 15 minutes talking to me, if you can bear such a thing. And we can make sure that 2023 is one of your best ever, if not the best. Thanks for spending time with me today. I can go and take a lemon sip now. And listen, whatever happens, whatever route you take, have a fantastic Christmas and New Year. And wish you every success in the 12 months and beyond to come. Bye for now.